What is going on, everybody? BobbyFi with my man Eric Sheets. We are going to be talking a little NBA basketball on this Monday. It's been I think I'm up a tiny bit on the season so far in the NBA, so that's good, I guess. But I'm ready to start having some good wins. I'm not sure how much I'm actually going to get to play tonight, but I'm excited to get back to it after a very strange football slate that I really didn't enjoy. Sheets, what are your sort of initial any sort of over thoughts on the slate here?
No initial thoughts on the slate, but what I would like to whine and complain and just for a few minutes.
Yeah.
So I did play a little bit over the weekend, and I cashed a little bit over the weekend. I did whatever, but I totally missed something. And look, unless somebody was going to remind me, I wasn't going to remember. I mean, I was away and whatever it is. And when I came back, somebody posted in the Discord, says, "Oh, Sheets, you told us this." And it was something that I said like a year ago, okay? And I said, remind me when this happens. And I forgot completely. And this guy came and reminded me of it. I don't know if you guys remember, but when Cole Anthony was hurt last year, he was supposed to go play his first game in Madison Square Garden. And I was mentioning that when he was in high school, like he would like live for that. He had like a big all-star game canceled due to COVID or something like that. And he had all this stuff. And he was like, grew up here. He couldn't wait to play Madison Square Garden. I said, his first game that he's going to be healthy back in Madison Square Garden, you got to play him. I forgot. And he had 12X last night for 66 freaking fantasy points at Madison Square Garden at 2% ownership. And yep. And some guy posted in the Discord. Actually, it was after the fact. Says, "Hey, Sheets told us to play Cole Anthony at Madison Square Garden." I barely remembered that I said it until that he put it in Discord. So I'm whining that, I'm just not as young as I used to be. I don't remember the stuff that I'm supposed to look for. Nonetheless, NBA, again, my usual disclaimer, be on the lookout for late swap opportunities. And I'm still riding from that first big cash I had, that $5,000 cash, from a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
So I'm still up pretty much that. So I'm ready to play a little bit bigger as I'm kind of around, and we'll see how that let's see if we can get rid of those profits really quickly.
Yeah, because I have a very initial. I see what you're a very initial you have what's going to be, I think, some condensed-ish chalk. There always is, but on the high-end guys.
Okay.
And the truth is, at this part of the season, I don't think that there's as big of a gap between them. It's not like we have Giannis in going full beast mode. Now, he always is going to play hard, but he certainly, made it more getting the other guys involved, doing other things where he's not quite going crazy. I loved him on, or I didn't love him on opening night, but because I wanted to play Durant everywhere, which, was fine. But other than the opening night, he hasn't really done anything. That was the ring ceremony game and all that stuff. I just think there's a lot of ownership going to go to guys like him. There's going to be still ownership on Durant, even at 10-2. There's going to be a ton of ownership on Harden. And I just think there's other guys we could pivot off those guys with that are going to be a fraction of their ownership and honestly have been the better plays so far this season.
I would just like to say, by the way, before we get into Harden, who we're going to get into, I'll just say that before the season, I suggested, or I posited the question of, I wonder if the new rule changes are going to affect him at all.
I don't think it has anything to do with the rule changes. He's absolutely not right.
And all it could be, but all I'll say is that it's bust 3 games in a row.
Yeah.
We'll see, because he's going to be freaking big chalk tonight too.
Well, he's just playing. He's not healthy. I mean, every NBA show you watch or talk about, they're saying don't even look at this as the Nets yet because they're not. Harden is just not healthy. He's not right. He's not in shape.
Okay.
So, but so maybe that's to do with the real. I don't think that's entirely what it is, but of course it's gonna make it somewhat of a difference. In the end, I expect him to be putting up 70s again in no time. So
all right, sounds good to me.
All right, so let's jump in, because this is one of my favorite places to. It's not to get off anything. The problem is he's going to end up owned because of his price. But I mean, boy, I really like Jason Tatum tonight. But he's played he had just a minuscule games his first couple of games out there. He was awful against the Knicks. He was 7 for 30 in that first game, in that overtime game. I know because I played him. He put up a nice game against Houston, which everybody's going to do. I personally I love Tatum, but at 31% ownership, maybe we can find something else to do here with Tatum. And that might be as simple as, well, depends on whether Jaylen Brown plays, of course. If Jaylen Brown plays, it might be as simple as just playing Jaylen Brown, because this Charlotte team is very very skeptical to me defensively. And I would say that Jaylen Brown is an immediate way of getting a little different with lower ownership if he does play. But it's not even my favorite one. It's just one of the ones to consider. On the other side, I think it's really important that people, and I think they finally have caught on to it, but like LaMelo Ball may not be the player that Lonzo Ball is this season in terms of fantasy production. I know that sounds like a weird thing to say, but look at these minutes, and Borrego didn't just indicate it. He's a man of his word. This guy is not one of those coaches who talks out of the other side of his mouth. He does exactly what he says he's going to do. And when he says, I don't see myself playing LaMelo more than 30 minutes, hardly often, if at all, that's a real sign that, hey, look, we love LaMelo and he can always go nuts in a short period of time. This is a tough matchup for him. You're going to probably end up with a lot of Marcus Smart on you. And I am not that interested in the Charlotte side of that, is the long story short, outside of, I think Gordon Hayward would actually be my favorite of those plays. But I'm not really in love with anything on the Charlotte side. The one other thing to look out for, though, is Terry Rozier against his former team. If he does, in fact, come back and play tonight, I think as a low-owned option, I think he is going to be in, by the way. I think Terry Rozier might be the play we're looking for tonight on the Charlotte side. Rozier and Hayward. Hayward will have some ownership. I don't think Rozier gets much. So I like Rozier and Tatum in this game to sum it up. But I do kind of like if Jaylen Brown plays him as a pivot off of those guys. And if he doesn't play, I like Dennis Schroeder as a pivot too.
All right. So again, full disclaimer as always, early. If you guys look at my projections and stuff, they're so early. I mean, some guys aren't even in there, some are whatever. The ownerships are just totally wacky. I hesitate to even put anything up until 5 o'clock at night, but yet I do it anyway, just so you guys can get a sense of what's going on. So the early look that I have, I don't have much interest in much. Like I have interest in Tatum, but like just, but certainly nothing approaching a must play status for me.
No,
the one guy that I have on the Boston side that is I play him a decent amount actually over the last year, and he's showing up again is Robert Williams.
Yeah.
So he would be the my number one guy from the Celtic side. I mean, not that Tatum's a bad play. He's just not like a priority. And I have nothing on Charlotte at all. Hayward, like you tell me, hey, who's gonna be the best player from Charlotte? Okay, fine. I'll say Hayward, but he rates pretty pedestrian for me.
How about Rozier?
I didn't even look at him yet.
Yeah, I think he was just announced as he's likely to play or something because I have a projection on him which I didn't have before.
Well, that's it. I don't even know anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, Hayward is Hayward, and I actually really, I actually think the Rozier thing is really worth speculating on. Guys like that who are very emotionally driven and will take a ton of shots at certain spots. You'd certainly think at least he'll give himself the opportunity against his former team. Have to double check the historic records of their matchups, but he does strike me as one of those guys. And here's my issue with the Robert Williams thing. First of all, I think he's going to have ownership tonight.
Sure.
Secondly, we saw a monster game out of him when there was no Horford against the Knicks. Huge game, looked amazing, played 44 minutes in the overtime, put up 50 fantasy points. Basically didn't even score in the overtime, I don't think, fantasy point wise, maybe got a few. But then he puts up 23 and 12 in the games that Hayward does play and start. So I think there is a good argument to fade Robert Williams at what's going to be, I think, fairly chalky ownership, at least as of the way I look at it right now.
Yeah, again, I don't really I don't really know what the ownership's going to be right now.
I'm speculating on it, but I feel like with NBA, I've gotten good enough to sort of have a good initial read, but then somebody's out and then everything changes. You know what I mean?
That's true.
That's my first read anyway.
So yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. Again, him at a good position as chalk is something I don't really want either.
Yep. All right, why don't you start us off on the next game while I load our last video and talk about Milwaukee.
So the next game I like is a guy on the Milwaukee I like who's 10-4. Yeah, Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think he's probably a pretty good play. It's weird because I have of those spend ups. I actually do have, and it's weird because if Harden is really something's wrong with him, I'd have to kind of manually adjust him down. Because I right now have Harden number 1 and then Giannis number 2. And then a big drop to the others actually. So I do like Giannis a decent amount. The point per dollar play who's standing out is actually from the Indiana side is Jeremy Lamb. at 3,500.
Yeah.
And the other one is the rookie. Duarte still looks good. So Lamb and Duarte, I haven't. Did you see? By the way, I thought of it. Did you see what Miles Turner did the other day?
Is a big game.
He had 40 real life points.
I know, that was crazy.
Yeah, so he had a big day. But Jeremy Lamb, Chris Duarte look like the best plays from Indiana right now, and Giannis looks like the best play from Milwaukee.
Yeah, so the Giannis for Milwaukee thing is a great example of what I think is going to be the mega chalk, and I think we can make an argument to fade it for the things I alluded to at the top of the show. Other guys in the same price range that people won't want to play over Giannis, and for good reason. But when you're going to talk about this type of ownership discrepancy, combined with the fact that Giannis doesn't really look, he's always going to come out there and bring it. Okay. His thing is about wins, though. It's not about like him trying to get his numbers. He just is going to get them because that's the way he plays. He's tenacious, he's aggressive, but I do think you're seeing a little bit of okay, we got the first game, the ring ceremony game out of the way. We've got all this, we have a whole season to get through. It's early in the year. We're, one of the favorites, maybe the favorites with the way that the Lakers and Brooklyn have looked to start the season. So I of course, Giannis, if you're playing a cash game, I think you do start with Giannis. I'll go the other way. I mean, also Indiana's defense has been just dreadful. I will probably go the other way again and consider Middleton instead.
Okay.
And it's still, again, Giannis could get there, but I think we probably get Bobby Portis back tonight. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think there's a decent chance that he is back. And I'm not finding myself in love with anything else on the Milwaukee side because of this. Bobby Portis, probably not in his first game back, but I'll consider him later. I think that Grayson Allen is in play, and Pat Connaughton are in play. They're going to have some up and down games, but they certainly have an opportunity with no Drew Holiday there. The other side is where I think it gets interesting because I don't think anybody's playing these guys, and I'm not entirely sure why. I mean, just based on their projections and stuff. So I really like Sabonis as a pivot off of Giannis, or if you want to play Giannis and run it back, he could be your other spend up. Not my favorite other spend up, just a guy who I am considering because he's pretty consistently going to be in that 50 range most of the time here, and maybe high. I mean, 50 to 70 range, I should say. Malcolm Brogdon has been I mean, this guy's put up 54, 55, and 45. And if people don't want to play him at 8K, I will be that person who plays him. Miles Turner is too cheap at 5,500 for the upside. We just saw it the other day. I know he had to score 40 real life points to get there and make 5 out of 9 threes, but he does seem a little more aggressive this season. He's going to be up and down with his fantasy production, but all of those guys are interesting to me. I'm not especially interested in Duarte. And I think the Jeremy Lamb thing is, we want to try to catch on to where there's some sort of mistakes made. I actually think Duarte probably has a good argument. The Jeremy Lamb thing, yes, he's 3,500. He's projected to score over 20 fantasy points. It's been the same every game. He shows up as a great point per dollar play. And his season high, he's scored 18, 16, and 9 fantasy points in his game so far this season. There's a chance he only plays like 16 minutes too, depending on how the game goes. I don't know how much I feel married to this Jeremy Lamb thing. They don't seem to love him as much over there. Sure, he makes sense as a tournament shot, but if he's going to be like 25% owned, I'm not going to do that. So that's just my initial thoughts. Is I would rather try to play Brogdon. Probably Brogdon. Looking at Brogdon and Turner would be the guys I would look at. And Turner has had some good games against these Bucks in the past, so that's probably what I'd be looking to do if I was going to play Giannis. But I'm on board to say that I think that the right thing to do, whether it works tonight or not, is to try to fade what I think will be a very chalky Giannis for some of these other high-end spend-ups that seem like they're overpriced.
My initial take, by the way, on the Jeremy Lamb play, again, he's projecting to be one of the top point per dollar plays, is my initial take is I agree with you completely. I think it's atrocious chalk, Jeremy Lamb. And you know what? He always has been. I mean, he's been atrocious chalk like since I've started playing DFS, honestly.
Right. And his position is weaker now than it was then, because at least he was starting then.
Yeah. So if he does get a bunch of ownership, I'll find I have multiple other pivots off of him that I would rather play. Yeah,
it makes sense to me.
We'll get to some of them.
Yeah. There's some coming up for me. All right, let's talk about Detroit and Atlanta. This is going to be Detroit. On the Detroit side, it's going to depend on whether or not Jeremy Grant plays. If Jeremy Grant does play, I am interested in Jeremy Grant.
Okay.
I think 6,300 is very reasonable for him. Let me see I have to add one more thing. I keep going back to that Brogdon thing. I think it's we kind of have to catch on to that trend. You know what I mean? Look what Brogdon's been doing. I really want to make sure like that. If I'm going to play Giannis, I think I would have to run it back with like a Brogdon situation. But Jeremy Grant, and then I don't really have any other interest on Detroit. And even that one is very vague at all. I think Atlanta could absolutely destroy them here. I also think, though, that John Collins is a really interesting in-between price. And I think we have Trae Young as the long shot play. Not my favorite of the other ones, but he's a guy who you can use to pivot off of some of the Giannis chalk and some of the other high-end chalk, some of the Tatum chalk, whatever you want. He's 9,300. He's going to have some games where he goes out and scores 40 real life points. This is the kind of team he could do it against pretty easily. I just don't think they're going to need him to, and they've got enough other bodies. But he's definitely on my list as a, I don't want to say get weird, but a get semi-weird. A guy's probably going to be like 4%, 5% owned when you look at these other guys who are priced up. So I think he's an interesting pivot off of Harden and all those guys too. So that's all I've really got here. I do think John Collins would be my next favorite.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of interest in this game. The only guy that I have, and this has got to be better, is some point per dollar shot on Frank Jackson at 3,500. That's
okay.
That's literally the only thing, and it's nothing great. Watch for.
That's my mistake. I should have mentioned Frank Jackson. That's a good play, actually, or a reasonable play, I should say.
Okay, and watch for Jeremy Grant being out to see who's starting, to see how projections adjust and all that stuff. That's definitely something to consider. So that's pretty much all I have from this game. Is maybe. I'm probably not going to do it, but Frank Jackson was going to look like a decent player.
I actually think that Frank Jackson might make more sense than Jeremy Lamb, though. I mean, I think he's going to play.
That was one of the pivots I talked about. I was going to mention.
Yeah, I think they're both going to be owned. I think Frank Jackson will be owned.
Okay.
But I think at 3,500, if you're going to pick between the two of them, I would prefer Frank Jackson in the minutes, even though Lamb might have more scoring upside or whatever.
Okay.
Washington and Brooklyn. I assume that Bradley Beal is going to be back tonight, but I don't know for sure. That obviously is going to change this whole slate. If not, Dinwiddie at 7K is still too cheap, which sounds funny to say, but I mean, he put up 57 in the last game. We still haven't seen Brooklyn look good defensively yet. You can't outscore everybody. Even guys like Kuzma, who will be firing and probably still low owned because they raised the prices. These guys are all still really strong plays because if there's no Bradley Beal. If Bradley Beal plays, it would probably be Beal with a little bit of Gafford, and then maybe not even Gafford. Probably just Beal, honestly, for me, assuming that he plays, and then nobody else. KCP at 3,800 is always going to get enough minutes to be in consideration. He doesn't really do all that much, but every now and then he can get a hot shooting game and be there with the Frank Jacksons, Jeremy Lamb. I still prefer him over Jeremy Lamb in some way because at least he'll be on the court for 30 minutes, whether Beal plays or not. It looks like now I'm getting contrary stuff on Terry Rozier, so we'll see what happens. He keeps getting added with a projection and then removed with a projection, so I don't know what's going to happen with Terry Rozier. The other weird long shot play that's only going to work sometimes, not even that long of a shot. I think that Nicholas Claxton is in play at 3,800, but the real obvious one is Harden, who's going to be the mega chalk. It certainly makes some sense, but hasn't really put that game up yet. I think I'd still rather just go up to Durant at 10.2. It does feel like a get right spot for Harden, but I think I prefer Durant considering ownership here. And I think I'm probably most slates they're on, I'm going to want to play one of those guys. There's a bunch of options today to consider, but Kevin Durant is going to be, significantly lower owned, I would imagine, than Harden. And the truth is he's been just much, much better fantasy scoring wise, real life wise, everything. And I think that even at 10-2, he's probably my preferred play.
Yeah, I agree with most everything that you said there. On the Washington side, the only guy that I really like is Bradley Beal, and I do like him. I do like him in this spot. And on the Brooklyn side, I think that given, like you said, the ownership discount you'll get on Durant, I think that it makes them both kind of like the same for me.
Right.
Harden's probably a better play, but Durant's lower owned and whatever. So I think those are pretty equal. And I do like the other one, the Claxton a little bit also. So literally the exact same takes as this.
Yeah. All right. Do you want to talk about Miami, Orlando?
Yeah, sure. So Orlando, the one of the guys that I have, I overheard. So when I overheard you talking about him a few games ago, just kind of, I think you were talking about him in some other video you were doing, just throwing him out there for something. He's showing up as a good point per dollar play today. This Franz Wagner, at 4,400. So I have that, and then to some degree, Mo Bamba, but the same price tag as well. He is exactly the same price as Robert Williams, right? So maybe you could use that as a pivot off that. But then again, like, wouldn't you rather just do Miles Turner if you're going to do that? I don't know. So those are really my the interest points I have in this game was that side. And the Miami side, Butler, I guess. Bam, I guess. This doesn't seem like the type of game that they would, that they would go crazy in. I don't know. I'm probably just take a shot with Wagner as kind of a value play, and probably stay away from this game. This game seems like kind of boring to me.
I agree. The one thing I'd say is that, okay, so no one's going to play Tyler Hero. I'm on record with saying that Tyler Hero will have a big season. He certainly has not let me down so far. He's put up 44 and 43. He did put up the 43 in 24 minutes against Milwaukee. I know the price is a little bit, off, but I do think that Hero is the guy that they'll lean on a lot during the regular season. And I think Bam is always going to be in play, even in these garbage matchups, because he can just get there so many different ways. I just don't think I'm going to end up with him tonight, realistically. On the Orlando side, I like the Wagner play. I think that, with the minutes being pretty secure for him, it seemingly, I think that he's really interesting at 4,400. The guy who people won't play as much of is Terence Ross, so you can use him as a pivot. And Terence Ross just put up 32 the last game. He's going to be a streaky guy. We know that about him, but he's 4,500 now on DK. He's definitely in play for me. Bamba, I'm fine. I'm okay with. Suggs is an interesting one because he can get fantasy points without scoring. Like, he went 4 for 17 the other night and put up 37. But I don't think this is the kind of matchup I want to be messing around with all this stuff. I think Terence Ross and probably maybe Ross even ahead of Wagner, actually. But those two guys stand out, and then Bam and Hero on the Miami side as low-owned options.
Hey, only because I'm just kind of staring at my sheet right now. Two guys from Milwaukee that I don't think we discussed. Did you talk about either George Hill or Jordan Nwora? Do you like either of them?
I don't like the price on Nwora now.
4,200. That's not good enough.
No.
Okay. All right, fair enough.
He had one really good game and he put up 29.
Right, I get it.
I would take it. He's fine. It's fine. Well, I mean, but also you're counting. I'm right now counting Bobby Portis possibly coming back. So I don't know how.
Oh, okay.
That'll take away some of those minutes. George Hill 3,500 usually on larger slates, not all that exciting. I guess we should be considering him a little bit stronger. You can put him in with those other guys. I sort of like the other guys we mentioned better.
All right.
But I think he's there. I think you're right. I think that 3,500 we should have mentioned them.
All right. Want to move on to Chicago, Toronto?
Yep.
So I don't have anything. You like anything here?
It's always okay to play Zach LaVine. That's what I'll say.
Has he done anything this year yet?
He's put up 50 twice in three games. You know what I mean? Basically Zach LaVine things. He had the one down game his last time out against Detroit, but I will speculate that maybe Lonzo with his upside is a little too cheap here. Not too cheap, too good of a play. I think on FanDuel he'll be popular at 6,200. So why wouldn't we consider him at 71 when he's got a 60 ceiling every time he's on the court? Toronto and Chicago, both of them playing a little slower and a little better defense, but Lonzo is going to put up his fair share of triple doubles this season, and the Bulls look good. So Lonzo and LaVine would be my highest level of interest on Chicago. On Toronto, they're begging us they're starting to try with the price to see if we'll take a shot with Dragic. He's 4,100. He's going to play minutes. And if we're going to consider all these other junk guys, he's actually a real player. I know he hasn't put up a game yet this year, but he's going to. I actually think all of the Toronto guys are in play. The top three anyway. The top 3 point per dollar projected ones. Anunoby, Van Vliet, who really has not looked like himself so far this season. and Dragic, but I think that maybe the answer would be the easiest with Anunoby. But none of it's especially exciting for me. But all those guys are certainly in there. They're just not guys I'm looking to go out of my way to try and get in. You want to talk about the Pelicans in Minnesota? This feels like a game where we could definitely do some stuff.
Yeah, the other thing I forgot to do is share my screen, by the way. But
oh, well, there you go. Sorry, I didn't even notice because I was too busy looking at my projections here.
That's okay. We could, let's not bother them. I mean, like, it's fine. We're doing
no, you don't want to put it up now?
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah, I think it'd be
disabled participant.
I didn't actually allow you to either. That's my bad, guys. Sorry about that.
Perfect.
All right. So I guess I'll start off real quick since you're doing that. I like some of the Pelican stuff. I think Devontae Graham is too cheap at 5,400. I don't even think he has to have an especially big game to get there. So I actually would have him as one of my preferred guys in the mid tier. I think 30 to 40 is completely well within reason, maybe even higher. I could see him going against this Minnesota team. I think that Nikhil Alexander-Walker is more of a FanDuel play. Oh, they actually raised his price a little on FanDuel, but I still like him better on FanDuel. And I think people are going to play Valanciunas, and it's a good matchup for him. I like that play quite a bit. I think it's really a good play on FanDuel at 6,600, but he's going to be really popular. He'll probably have ownership on both sites. I will just go out and say that I would play Brandon Ingram again at 8,300. It's a little, he hasn't quite put that huge game up yet, but he's been over 43 in every one of his games so far. Minnesota is one of the worst defensive teams in the league going back to last year. Now they're probably a little bit better than they were. We don't know if Josh Hart's going to play yet, so it's hard to know what's going to happen there. But I think Brandon Ingram, in order, I think I would rank him. I probably would rank him Graham, Valanciunas, Ingram on FanDuel, or on FanDuel I would have Valanciunas ahead. But on Ingram on DraftKings, I think is just about as good of a play with no ownership as Valanciunas. Maybe not quite as good of a play, but certainly not far behind. So I like all of those guys quite a bit. This is a game I think you want to get exposure to. And on the other side, I like Jaden McDaniels as a spend down more than I like the other guys that we talked about. And I like, D'Angelo Russell's cheap enough, certainly, to take a shot on him. D'Angelo Russell is not a good basketball player in real life at all. Never has been. But I don't mind the shot on him. If you want to take a shot on he or Edwards for fantasy production, I would prefer Edwards. And then the real one is, what do we do with Towns against Joe Val? I think that he's a strong play. He's another one of the pivots off of all this other chalk, or all these other high end guys. But my initial instinct is I probably would play more McDaniels, more Edwards, maybe a little bit less Russell, and more Towns.
I currently at 1:11 p.m. I have Jaden McDaniels the top overall point per dollar play on the slate.
Mm-hmm.
Better than Lamb, better than Wagner, better than those other guys. And he'll be owned accordingly. The only thing you have going for you is he's not multi-position eligible, right? So he's only power forward, so maybe that keeps it down a little bit.
Right.
But and those other guys like Jeremy Lamb, Wagner, Luke Kennard, we'll get to. I mean, like these guys are, and you put them at small forward also. So I do like McDaniels. I like Valanciunas, like you said, but I like better than Valanciunas. I like one of the other guys you mentioned, a totally different position. But I do like Devontae Graham a little bit here at 5,400. So it's going to be for New Orleans, Graham and Valanciunas. I didn't quite get to Ingram, but I'll listen. I could always play him. And then on the Minnesota side, the guys you mentioned, but mostly McDaniels and Towns for me. Yeah,
Ingram has had a 33% usage rate so far this season. He's basically without Zion, they run their offense through him. They do use Joe Val to some of that as well, but Joe Val's like a 20% usage guy, and did put up a big game against the same Minnesota team the other day. And I don't see why it couldn't happen again, but he's not necessarily going to go out and get 18, 20 rebounds every game. I do like Ingram. I do like Ingram and Joe Val. I don't know if you want to play, you need to play both of them, but I think this is a kind of slate you could get the game stack here and play one of those guys or both of them with Devontae, run it back with Edwards. And I don't know if I'd go Towns if I was going to play Edwards, but Edwards and McDaniels. And there you've got a little game stack going, which I think is totally logical. All right, you want to talk about Cleveland and Denver?
Yeah, so Jokic is so Denver. I like two guys from Denver. One is Jokic, and the other is Michael Porter Jr. My current Bills have had me give me a lot of Michael Porter Jr. actually.
Yeah.
And we talked about him before, in previous slates about being a really almost always a good GPP play. And the thing that's preventing both Jokic and Porter from being total smash plays is kind of like the matchup, right? Because I don't know what are they, 100-point favor or something like that. I don't even know what it is, but
they're favored by 10 actually.
Okay, that's not that bad then. So maybe there's not as much blowout risk as I originally suspected. So I think both of them are really, really good plays. And on the Cleveland side, I'm just not getting to anything today. So for me, it's just that it's Jokic, and I do have him a very strong play, just kind of like the next guy after Harden and Giannis, at least for me. And Michael Porter Jr.
Yeah, if Garland is out again, I would play on the Cleveland side Rubio and Sexton. Rubio has been just terrific, and if you're telling me that there's going to be I have no problem paying $6K for him if there's no Darius Garland. On Denver's side, I love Michael Porter Jr., but it's kind of like the weird thing. Like we were getting him at low ownership. He struggled early in the season, hasn't played well, but the ceiling is, I like him a lot. He's just going to be probably a little too popular, like honestly. And I am concerned about how Will Barton has hurt some of his production by Will Barton playing well. I'm not going to play Will Barton, but I just want to throw that out there. I like Jokic too, and I think he gets overlooked on this slate. I think that it's a really, really good spot for him. And the guy just puts up 55 to 70 like every game. So can't really be that bad of a play. But I would lean, if I in interest, I do like Porter the best, but there's a downside to that thing. We just saw it. He hasn't put up a game this season yet. And I would lean Porter Jr. though still, and probably Jokic second. I don't think I'm going to get involved with Monty Morris, Aaron Gordon, or Will Barton today. All right, finale. You ready for this one?
Yep.
So I don't care about how Damian Lillard has struggled. I don't care that he's not doing as much. I don't care that there's talks about lack of motivation and all these things. I would be more than happy to take a shot on either Lillard or McCollum. I think Lillard is the obvious one for me. And McCollum has been the better producer so far this season. And, limited time, he's played really, really well, actually. The team hasn't. But I like both those guys. And I still don't understand what they're doing with Nurkic and not letting him play a little more. But I would throw Nurkic in the mix. So I would rank it Lillard. For logic, if you just want a guy to get you through, like McCollum in the mid-tier makes a lot of sense. But I think Lillard is the pivot off of the high-end guys that could actually end up being the highest scorer on the slate. And I love the idea of running a little bit of this. I'm probably going to have one of those three, Nurkic, McCollum, or Lillard in all my lineups tonight. That's just because I believe in that. Larry Nance Jr., a long shot tournament play for sure. Luke Kennard on the other side is an interesting long shot tournament play. Not my favorite. Wish that Terrence Mann was a tiny bit cheaper. I like him a lot as a real life player. Hard to get the huge fantasy games out of him. But look, okay, so here's what we talked about, and I went over this conversation the other day with somebody. Paul George is not the same. He's not Luka. He's not all these guys. But the opportunity and the situation, like it's driving him to have this extremely high usage rate. He rebounds on top of it. He's good. He's going to get you at least one block, one steal almost every game. And I think that this is a spot at 10-1 where I could see him outscoring Giannis for a number of different reasons. And he basically has so far. I mean, he's put up 2 monster games in his 2 games so far. Very efficient, but you're playing the worst defense in the NBA. I like the idea of running out a Lillard and George lineup, and I think that's going to be really, really low owned. So that's what I'm looking at doing tonight.
Yeah, so we had this discussion before the first game of the season, or the first game that I played, I guess, of the season, and he was responsible for me cashing for pretty big. I don't know, maybe they just don't like his price tag, but Paul George is just fine for me. Looks good to me. He smashed game 1, smashed game 2. And if they're not going to play him again, I'll be more than happy to. And I totally agree with what you said about Lillard. And I had no problems running a look. All of these high end spends are I want to say fragile, but they're not locks. You know what I mean? Like you said, you can make a case honestly that there's something that Harden is not Harden right now. You can make a case that Giannis is in full 30-minute mode. You know, you can make the case that, well, I mean, Jokic is tough, but whatever. You know, so it's not like anybody is like a lock here. And Paul George, there's no Kawhi. He loves it. He just loves playing without Kawhi. You know, he just does. Every time he touches the ball, he can do whatever he wants. He gets rebounds. He even gets some assists, whatever it is. And like you said, Portland can't defend anybody. And God forbid, this game goes up and down or whatever, and they get into this whatever you call it, this show off contest between Paul George and Damian Lillard. I want a part of that. You know, so I'm in there with you on that.
Yeah, I'm just kind of triggered here because I just realized I loaded the wrong video for the first time for our last video. But yeah, I think that this is something you could do to get different on this slate. I really like that.
I'll tell you what I don't need. I don't need to play Luke Kennard. I just don't need it. Terrence, man, I agree with you. I wish he was in the threes. Like to play that, but I don't think I need to play Luke Kennard.
Yeah.
He rates, but just in fairness, he does rate to be, you know, pretty good point per dollar play, but who cares? It's like, I don't need to. I'm not going to. So yeah, I'm into the Paul George thing. It's totally, again, it's an island game too. I was gonna say if you have X, then switch to George, but unfortunately, there's nobody gonna be popular from that game at all. Right. That people are gonna have. The one guy that I showed up as kind of an okay point per dollar play, and if your things aren't going well really, really early. Well, let's say you have Luke Kennard, for example. You could swap to Anthony Simons if you want in this game as a lower owned option. So I mean, Simons always has the possibility of doing something. So yeah, I'll throw him in my player pool. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Well, why don't you sort of run through some of the things that you like through this slate? I'm just going to try and get this video loaded again. Sorry about that.
Well, I'm gonna do what what you do sometimes. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through my builds based on what I did. What I knew now actually had me almost locking in hard. Okay. Right. That's just gonna be based on numbers. I'm gonna be plugging in stuff like George, who's not gonna project as well. I'm gonna be plugging in stuff like Lillard, who's not gonna project as well. But based on the numbers, hard. Lamb is a guy that's gonna project well. He's gonna show up in builds, but again, he's not really a GPP type option, so I'll probably end up being under on him. Michael Porter Jr. I have to watch the ownership on him because, like you said, if he gets owned, it's not necessarily the greatest thing in the world. But I'd like to play him. I really, really would. Jaden McDaniels is probably my favorite of those value plays that we had mentioned. Mm-hmm. And aside from that, I'm really just gonna have to wait for ownership to really come up with the reasonable take. Can I tell you somebody who actually showed up in my early builds here?
Yeah.
We didn't even talk about. Man, they're gonna make me play him again. I have for some reason 25% of Aaron Gordon. I can't imagine doing that.
People can go ahead and do it. It's $5K. It's reasonable price. I just don't think I'm going to do that much of it. I don't mind it if you end up there. It doesn't. I don't think it's terrible. It's just not what I'm doing.
Okay.
At least as of right now. But yeah, I've got. So I mentioned I like the Paul George Lillard thing. I even think whether it's Lillard or McCollum or Nurkic, I like that game, and I want to get one of those guys run on the other side of that if I'm going to play Paul George, which I still feel a little bit shaky about, but I'm coming around to it. I like McDaniels too as a value. I also like the Frank Jackson thing. I think there's probably more upside than people think right there. Devontae Graham, I love in the mid tier along with Miles Turner. And I think your games you want to look at are the first and last game. I really like the Chris Middleton. I think this is a good spot for Chris Middleton in that matchup, and I like Brogdon as well. So those are some of my preferred plays. Other guys I'm considering, Cat, Jeremy Grant as another mid-tier play, Joval, who we didn't talk that, I talked a little bit about.
Yeah, we
And
talked about him.
yeah, and McCollum and what's his name, Anthony Edwards. I think all those guys are interesting in the mid tier, but my favorites are the first guys I mentioned.
Who's your favorite? So would you make Joe Val your favorite center?
I don't think like that, so I don't on
Okay.
DraftKings, so I don't know.
Okay.
Yes, I think that he off the bat he looks. I mean, it's like hard. How do you compare? It's like people ask that
Right.
question sometimes in chat, like, "Oh, do I play Joe Val or do I play Jokic?" And I'm like, "Well, that's not the same thing." Like, you know what I mean? I don't know how to answer that question,
Right.
but I do think that he's probably the guy I'm looking at the most right now. Yeah.
I'm looking at some of the plays we talked about. I'm trying to find some off the board ones. At 6,400, like you suggested, who's going to play Tyler Hero?
Yeah, I mentioned that one, but other ones are pretty
know.
off the board as well. I don't think you need to you can play big names that are off the board.
Right.
It's the Paul George Lillard combination is going to be very, very low owned.
I'll tell you this, what could be a good play also, you could also run, I mean, if you do want to play Harden, I mean, you could run Harden with Beal.
Yeah. I think Beal actually, if he plays, will get some ownership, but yeah, I'm fine with that. I really would like to try not to play Harden, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I don't think that the 700 difference between he and the way that Durant's running things right now is enough. The problem is I like other players better than those guys which is rare, for their upside at the same price. And if Paul George was good, the truth is if Kevin Durant stays so low owned, I might have to skip the Paul George thing because Kevin Durant has looked awesome right now, and it's his offense. To play for a guy who hasn't hit the number we need him to hit and doesn't look right so far and is out of shape and everything at the highest ownership on the slate just feels like a bad strategy in general. Now maybe it gets you there tonight, but I don't think you should be going out of your way saying you absolutely need to play Harden. I really don't. Not to say that he doesn't score 50 plus fantasy points, but you're telling me that other guys in that same range aren't going to do the same. So that would just be my initial thoughts. In general, my theory is play one of those guys in almost every slate, but I do think there's some other options in the same price tier that I could see outscoring him. And it's just at what is looking like 40+% ownership or possibly that high, I'm just not going to do it. If he ends up in the 20s, then we're having a different conversation.
Yep.
But that's where I am. So good luck. I'm sorry not to be able to be with you guys today for live Sheets. I appreciate you covering that one. And anything else before we get out of here?
No. You mentioned him before.
I said it. Graham is a preferred play for me.
I guess it's one of those things I've just never.
You've never played him on this team. Like
that's true.
That would be saying that would be like a guy coming out of college and you saying, "Well, I've never played him." Yeah, you never played him because he never played. It's a totally different.
So.
He was playing behind LaMelo Ball, Terry Rozier, and or alongside LaMelo Ball, Terry Rozier, and they were giving the other guy the Martin's minutes too. So it's a totally different situation.
Right. And one more before we go. I mean, what? I guess we'll talk about this. Well, you and I won't talk about this later, but those other value guys, if you don't want to play Jeremy Lamb, you like Wagner, for example, more than Lamb?
Yeah, but I mean, there's other, like I mentioned the other ones, McDaniels, Terence Ross.
Oh, that's interesting.
I think Terence Ross versus Wagner is like, Terence Ross could go out and score 60 fantasy points. Like he's done it before, he scored 50 real life points. And Wagner is like, you're getting there to get by and hope to get to 30 or something, you know? So he's the higher upside play, much lower floor though. But I do think that Terence Ross is a great pivot off of Wagner. I don't think Wagner's going to be owned either though. I just think that he's a much lower fantasy point producer upside than Terence Ross. Terence Ross could go out there and make 10 threes, which he's done before, you know what I mean? And he'll shoot. If he gets going, he'll shoot. He'll keep shooting.
What do you think of Zubac tonight?
I didn't really consider him all that much, and I don't really have a great explanation for why.
Well, because he hasn't gotten any minutes. I mean, he's had 17.
But this is the kind of game where you'd think he would. The other teams he played don't have a full-on traditional center. I guess you could argue that Memphis does now, but you'd think against Nurkic, I don't really know. Yeah, you'd think they would have to have him out there. So I actually like that play. I think it's kind of a longer shot play that I could get behind for sure. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, good luck to everybody tonight. And for Sheets, and I'm Bobby. And don't forget to, try the 2-week free trial if you can, and join us in our Discord channel. I'll attach it to the video. And let's crush it today, guys. Good luck, everybody.
I'll see you at 6.